In this lesson, we will discuss setting keyframes for some of the transform properties. Okay, so let's just take a moment to talk about what a keyframe is. A keyframe is going to be a frame in your animation that a pivotal change is going to happen. So I want to zoom in here really quickly. Just grabbing this and dragging it forward is going to zoom in close on your timeline so we can see individual frames. And then I'm going to talk to you a little bit about the transform menu. So let's go ahead and pull that up now. One of the first things I want to do though is just grab that millions piece of text and drag it to the top of your stacking order. That's just going to help us keep a little bit more organized. So you can go ahead and do that. And then come over here to this arrow and we're going to twirl that down. And you see that this opens up the transform menu. Now if yours looks like this, you can just click that arrow again. That's going to twirl down the transform menu for you. So you can see these different properties that we have. And then you can also see these little areas over here. If you're all the way zoomed in, it kind of goes light gray, dark gray, light gray, dark gray. Well, what that is are the different frames. So this is a frame from this point to this point, and this is a frame from this point to this point. So when you're setting a keyframe, it's always going to go at the beginning of the frame. So if I set a keyframe right here, it would be for the change to happen over this frame and the next if there's going to be more keys set after that. So basically, when you set a keyframe, you're telling your object to do a specific thing at a certain time. And some of the most common keyframes to set for a layer are going to be these transform properties right here that we're looking at. Now, it doesn't matter which key you set first. If you set the key that's going to say, I want to go here or here, it doesn't matter which one you set first as far as which one you tell it to do first, but the order they go in is going to make a difference in what your animation looks like. So we'll talk about that and that'll become a little more clear in a moment. So in many cases, especially for position keys, I actually set the place that I want my object to stop or arrive at first, and then I'll set the key where I want it to come from next. And so let's talk about why I would do that. This is where I want my piece of text to end up. So I'm going to kind of introduce this piece of text and have it come in from the top. So since I already have my piece of text set up here, I want to set the keyframe to tell it to arrive here. I'm going to just set that first. So let's zoom back out a little bit. And we'll just do it right here at about the 1 second mark, which is where our current time indicator is. You can see it's in between the 0 and the 2. And if you really want to get nitty gritty, you can look at it over here where it says 1 second. So let's go ahead and set a position keyframe for our piece of millions text. So how do we do that? You just come over here to the position property, and you see this little stopwatch that's next to it. So if I click that stopwatch, it's going to add a keyframe to my timeline. So you can see a little really just orange diamond was added right there at the 1 second mark. So what this is saying is that at this 1 second mark, I want my piece of millions text to be sitting right here. Now I want to go ahead and add a second keyframe that's going to come before this keyframe that will put the millions piece of text out of the frame. So what I'm going to do is just grab the millions piece of text and drag it up. And you see what's happening is it's making this line in between that place that we set the first key and then wherever we end up setting that second key. Now, one of the things I want to happen is I want this to come down in a straight line instead of it being kind of diagonal like this. So a way to do that is while I have this held down, hold the shift key, and that's just going to constrain that to move in a perfectly straight direction. So I'm holding shift and then I'm just going to let go of that. And now my millions piece of text is out of frame. And if you're following along, you have now officially created your first animation. So if I grab the current time indicator and drag this, we see that our millions piece of text is coming into our frame. And what we're doing right now is called scrubbing. So whenever you grab that current time indicator and click and hold it and move back and forth, you're basically scrubbing the timeline. And this is just a way to kind of quickly watch back your animation that you create. So the position transform property is what we just set those keys for, but I want to show you how to set a few other keys as well for some of these other properties. So really quickly, let's just move our current time indicator back onto that second key, because this is what I want my text to look like in the end. So one of the ways that I can do this really quickly if I'm scrubbing and my current time indicator gets close but not right on that key is, again, to hold the shift key, and it's going to snap it onto this key. So now we know that we're on the right frame and everything's going to be happening at the same point in time. So I want to set a key for my scale, my rotation, and my opacity. So all of these properties now have a key set for them so that the millions piece of text will look like it does right there. Now I'm going to move backwards in time and we'll set some other keys. But you notice that now I can't really see what my millions piece of text looks like because that position key that we set makes it go out of frame and I can't see it anymore. So what I'm going to do is just kind of bring this back down a little bit where I'm sort of in between here. And then I'll show you how to set these keys up and then move those keys to the place that you want them to be on your timeline. So the scale is the next property down from position. So I'm going to kind of scale this down a little bit. So we'll just have our millions piece of text a little bit smaller as it's coming in. And let's also change our rotation property a little bit. So I'm just grabbing this and dragging right along this value here to rotate that. I'm going to kind of rotate it up a little bit so it'll almost look like it kind of drops in. And then the opacity I'm going to take down a little bit to something like maybe 50%. So that's going to just make this a little bit lighter right there at the beginning. And so now we have something that looks like this. And we could leave it this way, but I want these keys that we just set to be at the same point in the timeline as that first position key. So I could just do a quick drag one by one where I grab the key and drag it to that current time indicator. And again, I can hold shift while I'm doing that and it will snap it onto that place on the current time indicator. But I don't have to do the keys one by one. I can actually just grab the key by selecting around them. You see it drags this little box and that selects both of the keys at the same time. Now I could have done that for all three, but I just wanted to show you how to drag one key at a time as well. So I selected those keys and now I'm going to drag them backwards, hold shift, and that will just snap them onto that current time indicator. So now let's scrub and see what our animation looks like. Pretty interesting what we've created here, and we're actually using 4 different transform properties to create this different kind of animation. So the scale is making it a little bit smaller at the beginning. The rotation is turning it a little bit on its side as it comes in to its final position, and then the opacity is making it from really just a lighter opacity to a more opaque solid there at the end. So later on, we'll talk a little bit more about this anchor point transform property. But for now, you've learned about the 4 most important transform properties that you're going to be using as a motion graphics designer. Now, there are other ways to animate text besides just setting keys for the transform properties. But for now, you've learned one of the most basic ways to create your first animated motion graphics.